All right. We're exactly 2 months away from the Vikings' first football game when they take on the Las Vegas Raiders. First week of preseason, August 14th. This week, PFF released the rankings of all 32 NFL teams, specifically their offensive line rankings. And all of a sudden, watch out. The Detroit Lions have the third best offensive line in the league, according to the website. Packers right behind them with the fifth ranked blocking unit. The Vikings cracked the top 20 at least, landing at 19. And the Bears, well, they tried. Second to dead last at 31. Not what you want to see or hear when you're trying to develop Justin Fields, but we won't talk about that. Okay, so Vikings land in tier 4 of PFF's rankings under the at least one good tackle, referring to Brian O'Neill, who's been the rock and foundation of the unit. Reggie, the Vikings are in the lower half of the list, and I know you haven't followed this team closely the past decade, but ever since Brett Favre, that era ended, they've been in search and need of a complete O-line, struggling to put together a top 10 unit over the past 10 years. It seems like they've always had one or two really solid blockers, but the rest has been just kind of a Ferris wheel of guys jumping in, trying their luck, and getting tossed to the curb. Every year, heading into camp, there's always an interior line battle up for grabs. Not much consistency or continuity up and down the unit, top to bottom. They take a lot of flyers on day 3, late round picks, hoping they can develop them into another John Sullivan. But now you look at what Rick Spielman did his final years when he finally invested early capital, premium picks into the unit. And it's like the saying goes, I mean, you get what you pay for. Second rounders with O'Neal and Ezra Cleveland, first rounders with Christian Darrisaw, Garrett Bradbury, third rounder on Wyatt Davis. How good can this O-line be in 2022? They still got to go out and prove it, but what's the ceiling for the Vikes offensive line in your opinion?
You know what's interesting about this article is they have the Vikings at 19.
Mm-hmm.
And then they start with, this could sneakily be the best offensive line of quarterback Kirk Cousins' Vikings career. And it's just like the best O-line of his career, and they're at 19? Goodness.
What's that say?
Oof. Goodness. You know what's interesting, too, is one of their opponents of this next season, the Buffalo Bills, they're right behind them at 20. And many people have the Bills being one of the best teams in football. Like, a lot of people are predicting that the Bills, you know, that Rams-Bills matchup in week 1 being like a pseudo preview of the Super Bowl next year. And they got the Bills at the 20th ranked offensive line. So it's just like, well, you know, hey, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a good sign, you know. What's interesting is, you know, you see teams like the Packers, who have traditionally had a good offensive line because they've had good quarterbacks, and you got to keep those guys clean. For like the past, 2 decades, it seems, they've had great quarterbacks at the Green Bay Packers. And so, you know, you got to keep a consistently good offensive line for them. But also, you know, look at what the Lions have done. 3 first-round picks along that offensive line. And, you know, if they're lower than 3, then that's probably a problem. But they got some dudes, you know, like they draft Penei Sewell. You know, a lot of people were thinking that maybe the Bengals would take him, you know, because, you know, Joe Burrow spent a lot of his rookie year on his backside. He spent a lot of last year on his backside too. But they still got to the Super Bowl. But, you know, he was like kind of projected as a can't-miss prospect. Brad Holmes, when they drafted him, like acted like he had just won the Super Bowl in that green room, in the war room. And that was interesting to see. But, you know, I think as far as the Vikings go, you know, it's funny. We keep looking at these projections, and every projection has Ed Ingram just penciled in at that right guard spot. Like, a lot of people just believe that he is the guy to plug in. And we talked about Wyatt Davis yesterday on the show. And, you know, it's like, well, you know, he could challenge for that spot. You know, he could also challenge for that left guard spot with Ezra Cleveland there. And so I don't know. I think the line should be much improved. You know, you got some guys on the line with something to prove, like Garrett Bradbury, who is, you know, kind of playing for a contract. He's like, okay, yeah, y'all aren't going to tender me, you know, 5th-year option. Okay. All right, watch this. Going to be the best center play that you've ever seen centered. And then, Darisaw expected to take a leap forward. Last year he talked a lot about, hey, nobody's touching Kirk. Nobody's going to touch him. And, they played the musical chairs with him and Rashad Hill for a big part of the season last year. And now this is his job. And now we're going to see what he can do with a full off season, got some experience under his belt. And you hope to see, as a Vikings fan, him take that next step forward. And if he does, you got two bookends on the right and left side, and Kirk Cousins is going to feel really good dropping back, trying to, find his guys all throughout the field, knowing that he's going to be protected on the outside. But then now you got to look at the inside with the guard play and the center play. Hopefully things aren't like eroding, on the inside for him as he's trying to get these passes off.
And I do want to touch on the Lions, maybe even the Packers here in a second. But first, back to the Vikes. Again, get what you pay for. The Vikings' old regime constantly tried to get cute and hit on the next John Sullivan, who they found in the 6th round from Notre Dame. Turned out to be a really solid center for years until a lower back injury wiped him out. 6th rounder on Brandon Fusco from Slippery. 4th rounder on TJ Clemens. A lot of Vikings fans remember him. A lot of high hope, high expectations. Never panned out. 3rd rounder on Pat Elflein from Ohio State. Never panned out. Danny Isidora, 5th rounder out of Miami in 2017. Those guys were expected to come in and compete for a starting job when it's like they just simply don't have the talent to be a starter at that level. Then they would patch up the rest with free agency. Riley Reif was solid. Mike Remmers, Joe Berger, Charlie Johnson, Jeremiah Searle started for a little bit. They finally learned their lesson, though, and used early picks, and it just feels like the potential of this young unit is the highest it's been in a long time. And that's important because when you got somebody like Kirk Cousins, as you mentioned, who lives and dies in the pocket, not a guy who's going to create plays with his feet, make things happen outside the pocket. He needs a clean pocket to step up into. Yeah. You better have the right guys and the right talent to get the job done. And that's why I think fans should be excited no matter who wins that right guard battle. 5 guys with early round talent will be blocking in front of Cousins for the first time in over a decade. So a lot to be excited about there. How about the rest of the NFC North? You mentioned the Lions. They've done something similar, going out and using not just early draft picks, but top 20, top 10 picks on their O-line. Frank Ragnow, top 20 picks, stud center, one of the best in the league. Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker, both top 10 guys. Those are like blue chip cornerstones to build around for a long time. Whether it's the Lions ranking 3rd on PFF's list or the Packers or the Bears, what else sticks out to you on this list outside the Vikings in the NFC North?
What's interesting is the Eagles they have at number 1.
Yeah, wow.
The Eagles. And, it's pretty cool, though, that they do boast something like that because they do have, this quarterback who is needing some time back there, gonna be mobile, making some things happen. So, those guys kind of have to hold their blocks a little bit longer than maybe a traditional drop back quarterback. And I think that's going to be very interesting because the Vikings are going to see this Eagles team in week 2. And we've been talking so much about the Vikings defensive line and how they're going to be getting after it in this new front. And that's going to be a test for them coming up in week 2. Like to see Za'Darius and Daniil going up against guys like Lane Johnson. Jason Kelsey's been just a rock back there for years and years. And I think that's going to be a really great chess match to see who gets the better of who. But they're going to be rearing back coming after Jalen Hurts. And that's going to be a fun matchup in week 2.
And you think about the Eagles, too. They had 2 first-round picks, and they didn't use either of them on an offensive lineman. A lot of people thought they would to try to replace Jason Kelsey at minimum. But They still rank number 1 on PFF's offensive line rankings. I have a hard time with the Packers at 5 because of exactly what we just talked about. You get what you pay for, but the Packers are 5 on the list without using premium capital. Not one single first-round pick on their O-line. Couple late seconds in Elton Jenkins and Josh Myers, but when you strike gold with a guy like David Bakhtiari in the 4th round, makes life a lot easier. Makes you wonder how much having an elite superstar quarterback like Aaron Rodgers has on the effectiveness and the output of the blocking up front. I mean, when you have a guy that can not only get rid of the ball so quickly, but with deadly accuracy, it just makes the job up front night and day easier. If there was one O-lineman you could steal from another NFC North team, swap them out with the current starter, who you taking?
Ooh, this is good, man. Okay. All right. Ooh, okay. So immediately you kind of think about like Ragnow, because they're not all that sold on their current center. This is tough because I believe in Christian Darrisaw, so it's like I don't necessarily want to take a tackle away from a team.
Right, exactly.
Just because you're like, you believe in O'Neal, and I believe that Darrisaw is going to be, a burgeoning young player in the league. Maybe for that left guard position, maybe you'll snatch John Runyon.
Yeah, that's a good one right there.
Yeah, how about that?
Penei Sewell would be maybe the easy choice. Maybe Taylor Decker, both young and play, again, the far premium tackle positions. But again, as you mentioned, we got Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw. Do I really want to double dip there? I think the wild card for me would be actually Frank Ragnow, because I know it's a center position, maybe not quite as valuable as a tackle, but multiple Pro Bowl selections, and you'd be turning your biggest weakness, arguably, into maybe your biggest strength. So rock solid as they come in both the run and the pass protection. We talked about giving Cousins a clean pocket to step into. I think help maximize Cousins' talents as a pure pocket passer. When he's protected well and can step up into that pocket, Cousins can be deadly accurate in his own right. So,
absolutely.
That's a tough one, but yeah, Frank Ragnow, I think, kind of the sneaky wild card for me. All right, just 5 weeks before the start of training camp takes place at TCO facilities. Guys resting up right now, enjoying the last little free time they have before clocking into work for the 2022 season right around the corner.